We're talking about two things. First, Palestine action themselves and people who are taking practical and effective measures to prevent a genocide. And then we're also talking about the people who are protesting in Parliament Square with cardboard signs and holding up signs saying, I oppose genocide, I support Palestine action, because they are also being prosecuted under terrorism laws. And to most people watching those scenes, and people being hauled into the back of police vans in Parliament Square, people believe they're witnessing the end of democracy. It's got nothing to do with democracy. So I would say it's much more than a worrying trend. It's democracy itself in grave peril. Clear that the justice system is not upholding its duty to protect the right to protest, which is at the heart of any democracy, the right to dissent. If you lose the right to dissent, what you're left with is a totalitarian regime where there's only one way of thinking and only one way of talking. And the British legal system is allowing itself to be instrumentalized to silence dissent, and in particular to silence opposition to the crimes against humanity that are taking place in Palestine. And some of this people will be familiar with already, but just, one example of what's happening in the UK, we've got a student being prosecuted for saying at a public meeting at a university, the Palestinian people have a right to defend themselves. And that's nothing more than a proposition of law. That's a statement of international law. All people have the right to defend themselves under international law. And that person is being prosecuted under the terrorism laws. So when the courts allow things like that to happen, they are undermining the rule of law itself, they're undermining democracy, and they've allowed themselves to be co-opted by the oil and arms industries and to become their private security. Hunger strike is always a painful thing to hear about, let alone to be doing it yourself. And we know that those people are the most courageous, principled people who've been moved to take action because they couldn't be bystanders to a genocide. And I think it shows you that their courage, extends into the prison system. You ask about the limits of activism. I guess that's one way of seeing there is no limit, because we always ultimately have some sort of choice, some sort of control over our own bodies, if nothing else. And maybe that's part of the message that the hunger strike is sending. It's also a reminder that those people are political prisoners. I think there are many people in Britain who would be surprised even to hear that term, who associate political prisoners with things that happens in other countries, in other places, not in Britain. But there is no doubt at all that those principal people are political prisoners, and they are being detained in human conditions with no respect for the most basic democratic rights or due process. They've been held far longer than the custody time limits, having been convicted of nothing. I think the message that it sends is we have political prisoners in the UK, and all people concerned about democracy should be outraged by that.